My husband left me for a younger woman because I was infertile, so I cut my losses and moved on, only to realize that he was the problem all along, because I felt pregnant right away. After, I married my current husband and am now having his baby. An ex-husband is furious and calls me all the time, claiming that it's unfair, because his young GF wants nothing to do with him, so I owe him another chance. I'm a 33-year-old woman, and I'm currently expecting my first child with my wonderful husband Daniel, who is 35. You'd think this would be a happy time in my life, but my ex-husband Tom has somehow made it all about him. His recent behavior has made me wonder if I'm being unfair by excluding him completely. Tom and I were married for 6 years. At first it felt like we had a great relationship. We were a team building our life together, and I really think we were in it for the long haul. But as time went on, our marriage became consumed by one thing. We didn't have children. It was something we both wanted, and when it didn't happen, the stress began to take over our lives. We tried for years. I did everything I could to make it work. I changed my diet, caught every little thing, and put all my energy into trying to start our family. Meanwhile, Tom became increasingly distant. At first he was supportive, but his patience was wearing thin. He began to blame me for our problems. He wouldn't come out and say it at first, but the way he looked at me was changing. He started making comments about how couples we knew were getting on in their lives, how they had something we didn't, and how it wasn't fair to him. Eventually, his frustration turned to outright resentment. He began to avoid me at home. He'd stay late at work and spend more time with his friends than with me. When we did talk, it was usually about how unhappy he was and how he felt our marriage was stagnating. At one point he even said that he wasn't sure if he could see a future with me, if we couldn't fix this. And since we were not having children, things went from bad to worse. Tom started comparing me to other women. He made snide remarks about how some people didn't seem to have these problems, and that maybe he deserved to be with someone who could actually give him a family. These comments cut me to the quick. I felt like a failure as a wife, and it started to take a toll on my mental health. I was constantly walking on eggshells around him. I tried to do everything in my power to make him happy, but nothing worked. One day, Tom came home and told me he couldn't do it anymore. He said he wanted a family and he didn't think he could have one with me. He told me he was leaving and that he had already met someone else, a younger woman called Kelly. He said he hoped I would understand, that he was only doing what was best for him. That was when my world fell apart. The divorce was brutal. Emotionally, I felt completely abandoned and worthless. For a while, I struggled to get out of bed in the morning, but slowly I started to pick up the pieces. Therapy helped a lot. So did leaning on my friends and family. I threw myself into my career and started to rediscover who I was outside of being Tom's wife. About a year after the divorce, I met Daniel. He was the complete opposite of Tom. Patient, kind, and genuinely interested in me as a person. We met through mutual friends at a dinner party, and we just clicked. At first I was reluctant to open up about my past, but when I did, Daniel was incredibly understanding. He told me he wasn't worried about whether or not I could have children. He said he cared about building a life with me, no matter what that looked like. Daniel and I got married at the beginning of this year. After talking about it, we decided to try for a baby, even though we knew it could be a long and difficult process. To my surprise, I became pregnant almost immediately. We were thrilled. I finally felt like I was entering a new chapter of my life, and leaving the pain of the past behind. Unfortunately, word of my pregnancy somehow got back to Tom. I'm not sure how he found out, perhaps through mutual friends or social media. Either way, he contacted me out of the blue. First, it was just a single text. He congratulated me and said he was happy for me. I ignored it, but then the calls and messages started. Non-stop. Tom said he felt that life had been unfair to him. He claimed he had only left me because he thought I couldn't have children, and that he had been led to believe that it was my fault. He told me that his relationship with Kelly had ended because she had decided she didn't want children. Children after all. Leaving him alone and childless. Now he said he realized he had made a mistake and wanted me back. He said I owed him another chance because, in his words, our story wasn't over. He blamed me for letting Daniel steal the life he should have had with me, and said it was only right for us to try again. He even suggested that I leave Daniel and raise my child with him instead. He said it would heal the wounds of our past. I was shocked and angry. I wasn't planning on answering any of his calls or messages, but I just got so angry when I saw all his demands that I couldn't help myself. I told him that he had no right to make these demands after leaving me, and that I was happy with my life now, but he wouldn't let it go. He kept insisting that we could things and that I should at least meet him to discuss it. To make matters worse, some of my friends are actually on Tom's side. They've said I should be more understanding because he seems genuinely remorseful, and that I should consider giving him another chance. One friend even asked me if I really loved him once and if that love was worth throwing it away completely. I feel like I'm going mad. I have worked so hard to move on from the pain he has caused me, and now he's trying to drag me back into it. But am I being too harsh? Ida, for wanting nothing to do with him. I would like to start by saying thank you to everyone who took the time to read my post, to comment and offer support. I didn't expect it to get so much attention, and honestly it's been overwhelming, but also reassuring to know that so many people understand where I'm coming from. Your words have been a huge help in getting me through this chaotic situation. And finally, that I have not been too hard on Tom. And yes, I have received many comments telling me that my question was the dumbest thing. But you have to remember that I'm pregnant, and that a lot of people around me were telling me I was wrong. I really felt like I was going mad. There have been a lot of questions in the comments, so I'm going to answer those first. Before I give you the real update, many of you have asked why Tom and I never had any fertility tests or treatments during our marriage. I went to countless doctor's appointments to find out what might be wrong. Every test came back normal. I had no medical conditions or reasons that would explain why we weren't conceiving. I even brought up the idea of Tom getting tested, but he flatly refused, claiming he didn't need to because he was healthy and had an active lifestyle. He insisted that the problem couldn't be with him, and at the time, I didn't push harder because I was too emotionally exhausted. Looking back, I realize how deeply unfair that was. I was carrying the burden of our struggles while he sat back and refusing to even consider that he might be part of the problem. It's painfully clear now that his refusal to take responsibility was just another way of shifting the blame onto me. But at the time, I was so desperate to save our marriage that I accepted his version of events without question. It's one of my biggest regrets. Another thing people asked about was how Tom found out I was pregnant. I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect it was through mutual friends or social media. I haven't spoken to him since our divorce, and my husband, Daniel, and I are careful about what we share online. However, I have told a few old friends about the pregnancy, and it's possible that one of them let it slip. Now for the update. After posting my original story, things took a turn for the worse. A few days ago, Tom turned up at my place of work completely unannounced. I work in an office, and it's not the sort of place where people just drop in. So when I saw him standing in the lobby, I was completely taken aback. He demanded to speak to me. He said it was urgent and that I had ignored his messages. I told him I wasn't interested in talking and asked him to leave, but he refused. He started to raise his voice. He said he deserved a chance to explain himself. My colleagues quickly noticed the commotion, and some of them came in to ask if I was all right. When Tom wouldn't back down, security was called and escorted him out of the building. The whole thing was humiliating and frankly a little scary. A bit scary. After he left, I felt so angry and exhausted at the same time. I couldn't believe he thought it was appropriate to show up at my house, appropriate to show up at my place of work like that, let alone cause a scene. It's one thing to send messages or emails, but to physically confront me in a professional setting crossed a big line. I'm grateful for my colleagues in the security team who handled the situation calmly, but it left me shaken. I mean, I never once told him or any of our mutual friends where I worked. Our mutual friends were people I hardly ever spoke to, and I don't think I ever advertised where I worked. Tom must have followed me to work or at the very least, done some very heavy stalking to find out where I worked. And that really scared me. That night I told Daniel everything. He was furious not at me but at Tom for his behavior. Daniel has been my rock through this whole ordeal, and he immediately took steps to make sure I felt safe. We discussed the situation at length, and he suggested that I document everything in case we needed to take legal action. He had a friend who was a lawyer, who I immediately, to help me if things went wrong. Daniel also reminded me that Tom's actions weren't my fault, and that I didn't know anything about him. Having his support was a huge relief, especially at such a stressful time. The next day I got an email from Tom. In it he accused me of being cruel and heartless for not giving him a chance to tell his truth. He went on and on about how much he was suffering and how he felt I had moved on without giving him closure. The part that really pushed me over the edge was when he referred to the baby I was carrying as his. He wrote as if Daniel wasn't even in the picture, as if he still had some claim on my life. I immediately forwarded the email to my solicitor. My lawyer advised me to block Tom on all platforms, which I've since done. I've also started keeping detailed records of every interaction with him just in case this escalates further. As for Kelly, the younger woman Tom left me for, I've heard bits and pieces of what happened between the two. Between them, from what mutual friends have told me, it seems that their relationship fell apart because Kelly didn't really want children. This must have come as a blow to Tom, considering how much he claimed to want a family. I don't know all the details, but it's clear that she's moved on with her life, and Tom is now trying to use me as a safety net. The whole situation has been draining, to say the least. I've worked so hard to rebuild my life after the devastation that Tom caused, and it feels like he's trying to drag me back into the chaos, but I refuse to let that happen. I've come too far to let him destroy the happiness I have found with Daniel. For now, I'm concentrating on my pregnancy and preparing for our baby's arrival. Daniel and I are taking every precaution to ensure our family is safe from Tom's interference. Thank you again to everyone who has offered support and advice. It means more than you can know. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. It's been a wild few days, and I honestly don't even know where to start. I've been feeling so confused and frustrated lately. Tom's behavior has completely thrown me off balance, and things have escalated in a way I never saw coming. I thought blocking him would be enough, but now he's going around, trying to contact me through anyone he can. Friends, family, anyone who knows me. I'm at my wit's end and I really need to talk about this. Let me start by explaining what happened. About 3 days ago I got a phone call from my mom. She sounded a bit frazzled and said that Tom had rung her to ask about me. She said that he had told her how unfair I had been and how I had shut him out without giving him a chance. First I was just shocked. I hadn't heard from him in a long time. So to hear that he was reaching out to my mom, Felt like a huge violation of my space. My mom told me that she was firm with him though. She made it clear that I didn't want anything to do with him, and she told him to stop contacting her. She also mentioned how hurt she was, that he was trying to get to me through her, when she knew how badly he had treated me in the past. It made me feel good to know that she was standing up for me, but it also made me so angry that Tom had put her in that position. My mom has always been my biggest supporter, and it just doesn't sit right with me that he's trying to manipulate her. Less than an hour later, I got another call. This time it was from my sister. She's always been someone I can talk to about anything, so I didn't expect to feel so strange talking to her. But when she told me that Tom had called her, I felt this tight knot in my stomach. She said that he was really upset about me, that she had ignored his attempts to reach out to her, and that he had asked her if she could help him get through to me. My sister told me that he seemed very desperate, and she was just trying to find out what was going on. She said she was just worried about me and wanted to help, and that maybe I should think about how things ended up between me and Tom. I'm not saying my sister doesn't care, but the way she was talking made me feel like she was being way too soft on him. She told me I was being too hard on him and maybe I should listen to him. She even suggested that maybe I was holding on to the past too much. To be honest, it made me feel like she didn't understand what Tom had put me through, or worse, that she was giving him the benefit of the doubt in a way that felt like a betrayal. I never expected her to defend him or even entertain the idea of me going back to him, especially now that I'm so happy with Daniel and pregnant with our baby. I tried to explain to her that there was absolutely no chance of me going back to Tom. I've built a new life with Daniel. We're happily married and I'm pregnant with his child. Why would I even consider going back to someone who left me for another woman? But my sister seemed so convinced that I should at least give Tom a chance to explain himself. She said that maybe he had changed and that maybe he had realized his mistakes. But to me, it was as if she was ignoring everything he had done and all the pain he had caused. He left me when I needed him most, and now that I've rebuilt my life, he comes back and tries to destroy it. I couldn't understand how she couldn't see how crazy this was. We argued for a while, and it ended with me telling her that I didn't want her to get involved. I told her to stay out of my business and stop trying to fix something that was already broken. It felt like a punch in the gut, to be honest. My sister and I have always been so close, but now it feels like there's this distance between us, and I don't know how to bridge it. She hasn't spoken to me since and I'm devastated. She accuses me of being cold-hearted and says that I'm shutting people out, but she doesn't understand that it's not about being cold. It's about protecting myself from someone who has no respect for me. As if that wasn't enough, Tom sent me flowers yesterday. At first I didn't know how to react. I opened the door to find a bunch of roses and a card, and immediately I felt that unsettling feeling all over again. It was the note that really got to me. It was full of these vague statements like, "I'll wait as long as it takes for you to forgive me, and I'm ready to make things right." It was like he was trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty, trying to make me believe that I owed him a chance to make things right. But the thing that bothered me the most was the way he acted like everything was all about forgiveness, as if he hadn't destroyed our marriage and walked away when I needed him, away from me when I needed him. I can't believe he has the nerve to send me flowers like that after everything. It's like pretending that none of the hurt he's caused even matters. Daniel and I have talked about it and he's furious. He told me not to get involved with Tom at all, and that we're considering legal action if this goes on. He's been so supportive through it all, which has been a huge relief. He wants me to feel safe and secure, especially with everything that is going on. At the moment, I'm just trying to focus on what's important: my pregnancy and my life with Daniel. The last thing I need is Tom's drama trying to force its way back into my life. But I'm at a point now where I'm seriously considering a restraining order. Tom's behavior is crossing a line, and I'm not going to let him continue to bully me. I know this won't be easy, especially with the tension between me and my sister, but I can't let him keep dragging me into his mess. So that's where I am at the moment. I'm still trying to make sense of it all, and I feel a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion. But I'm going to stay strong and do what's best for me and my family. Thanks again to everyone who has been so supportive. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens. Hey, it's been about 3 months since my last post. And wow, what a roller coaster of emotions it's been. I wish I could say it was all smooth sailing, but honestly it's been anything but. I'm now 25 weeks pregnant, and the stress of Tom's attempts to force his way back into my life has really started to take its toll on me and my baby. It's been hard. I've been more anxious than usual, and there have been days when I haven't even been able to sleep because of all the things on my mind. It's scary to think that all this drama could be having such on my health, especially when I'm carrying a little one. My doctor says it's important to try and stay calm, but with Tom coming up all the time, it's been difficult. But enough about the stress. Let me tell you what happened. After Tom's last stunt with the flowers and the constant harassment, Daniel and I decided that enough was enough. We took out a restraining order. I can't even begin to describe what a relief it was to take that step. It was to take that step. We also made sure our home was as safe as possible, installing the security system, changing the locks, and just being extra careful. The last thing we wanted was for Tom to try something worse. Then out of the blue, Tom is spamming my phone with messages from a new number. I didn't recognize it at first, but when I saw the messages, I knew exactly who it was. To be honest, I wasn't surprised. Tom just doesn't get it. The first text was long, full of apologies, and then again, trying to guilt me into taking him back. But this time there was a twist. He was apologizing for the way he had treated me, and even admitted that he had been wrong about a lot of things. The biggest bombshell. He told me that he had finally been tested for fertility problems. Turns out that he's the one who has a condition that would make it difficult for him to have children. He said he'd been blaming me for years. He thought I was the reason we couldn't have children. But now he said he understood the truth. It was him all along. I'll admit, a small part of me felt vindicated when I heard that. 4 years with the guilt of thinking I was the one who wasn't capable of having children, and finding out that it wasn't my fault at all, felt like a relief. But then a wave of anger washed over me. What if Tom had been honest with me? If he had just got tested sooner? Maybe we wouldn't have gone through so much heartache. But instead he chose to blame me, abandon me, and moved on with his life like it was my fault. And now, years later, after all this time, he just came back with his feeble apology, trying to get me to take him back. The messages kept coming, telling me that he realized his mistakes, and that he was ready to change, that we could start again and have a family together. He even went so far as to say that I was his only chance at happiness, and that he was sorry for everything. He was like a broken record. And honestly, reading those messages made me sick. He couldn't even take responsibility for leaving me in the first place. It was all about him, his mistakes, and what he wanted now. But that's the thing about Tom. I knew he wasn't truly sorry. If he was, he wouldn't have treated me the way he did. He wouldn't have left me for someone else. He wouldn't have let me carry the guilt for so long. I never replied to his texts. I've learned the hard way that engaging with him would only make things worse. Instead, I did exactly what my lawyer told me to do. I blocked the number and made sure it was the last I would hear from him. I'd hear from him. I didn't want to be caught up in his manipulation. My focus is on my life with Daniel, and I have no room for Tom's games. But it didn't end there. A few days later, I found out something else that blew my mind. Tom was suing me. Yes, you read that right. He was suing me for emotional distress. He claimed that my pregnancy had caused him irreparable harm, and that he was suffering because I was moving on without him. It was almost laughable, but at the same time, the audacity left me speechless. I mean, this man walked out on me and left me for someone else. And now he's trying to say that I'm the one causing him emotional pain. Felt like a slap in the face. I spoke to my solicitor about it, and they told me that the case was ridiculous and probably wouldn't go anywhere. They said it was just a desperate attempt on Tom's part to get attention and possibly drag me into his mess. The lawyer didn't seem worried, but I couldn't help feeling that Tom was doing this just to get under my skin, like he was trying to play some twisted game, hoping to get a reaction out of me. But I'm not playing. I'm not going to let him drag me down to his level. Again, honestly, I'm just concentrating on the good things in my life right now. Daniel has been such a rock for me through all of this. We're looking forward to the future, our baby and our life together. I'm learning how to protect myself and my family from the toxicity. Tom is trying to back into our lives. I've decided I'm done with him for good, and if that means cutting off contact with anyone who takes his side, so be it. My sister still insists that I listen to him, and I've told her once and for all that I can't do that. I told her I put my family and my peace of mind first. It's hard, but I know it's the right thing to do. So that's the update for now. I'm keeping my head up and focus on the people that matter. Thanks again for all the support. I've had enough of Tom and his drama.